The best kitbashes start with simple models, a blank canvas of sorts. This Space Marine Assault Intercessor needs some more blanking, to remove some of the regal details that are at odds with the vibe. So, cutting, scraping, some ablative action with the sanding stick, followed by a bit of narrative friction from our old pal, the fiberglass pencil. Pretty sure that guy gets more screen time than I do. On that note, I'm Chris, this is Offbeat Builds, and today we're having fun with narrative. Which I guess means legs and arms, limbs if you will. This one is from the Intercessor Sergeant, and I don't need the bolter since he's going to be carrying a staff, but I do need the pose, hence the hackery. Speaking of which, anyway, I like to get my pose locked in early, so this Assault Intercessor arm was bereft of its sausagey grabbers and attached to the torso using the dark magic of adhesion. I temporarily tacked Brother Horatius to the base. Now I acknowledge it's a silly name, but there's probably some significance. Unlike the shoulder pads, which were the plainest ones I could find. Again, we're downplaying the fancy stuff today. I took the opportunity to carve in some battle damage before I started attaching weapons and greeblies that would hinder access, all for the sake of a bit of storytelling. So here's some cheesecloth. We're going to make a cloak. You can't be nomadic without a cloak. I made a very rough paper template, vaguely traced it, and cut it out. Roughly. As you'd expect, I broke out the Mod Podge, which is marginally better than PVA for solidifying this sort of material. I added some paint so you can see what's going on, and slapped it all over the robe, making sure I pushed it into all the straggly bits. Then it was time for a bit of fun. Adding flappy materials to miniatures is an exercise in patience, but if you use something like Mod Podge, you do get plenty of working time to figure it out. After some poking and prodding to form the shape and to pry apart the fibres of the cloth a little bit, I applied a few strategic drops of thin CA glue. This was to secure it to the model and in a couple of spots that I thought would droop down too much as the Mod Podge dried. Let's move past the rather uninteresting power pack and journey into the world of magic sticks. Oh, has he gone full Gandalf? I don't know, but he's definitely getting a staff. That hand's from the Reaver kit, by the way, which I chose so I didn't have to carve off too much stuff. The staff itself is a piece of 1.5mm brass rod, which is one of my favourite kinds of rod, just in case you were wondering. After gluing the hand in place in the middle of the rod, I jumped into the archives to find a staff topper that would sell the idea that he had constructed it himself. This one's from the Frostgrave Wizards set, which is a great source of magic and magic-adjacent parts. With a bit of drilling and some grabby action from the superest glue I know, things were taking shape. And that shape needed to be fleshed out with some rope. Shipbuilder's rope to be precise. This was knotted near the hand and secured with a drop of thin CA glue. Once that had stopped being a sticky hazard, I gave the shaft a nice, consistent wrapping, don't even think it, before locking the whole lot in place with a little more thin CA glue. Once set, our newly rustic-ated staff could be affixed to the model. I chose to solidify the loose strands of wire with some more glue since I don't really trust myself to paint them when they're flapping about in the breeze. Nomad or not, he needs another hand. I found this open right hand in my bits box. I think it's from one of the old Devastator Marines, but I fully expect to be corrected in the comments. With our lone soldier now calling to the heavens, I turned my attention to the head. I needed to form a neck first from a blob of green stuff secured with a drop of CA glue. The chosen head, from that Frostgrave Magician set, was drilled to accept a pin and then set aside while the neck putty was curing. Rather than sit and watch, I chose to manufacture some additional gear for our hero's pack. I started out by making a blanket roll from a thin sheet of green stuff, cut into a rectangle, and then rolled into a roll. I used a sculpting tool to press in some depressions where the tie-down ropes would squeeze the material, and formed creases emanating from the new blankety trenches. The greenery was then attached to the top of the pack with a drop of CA glue and bedded roughly into place. If you'd like to see this technique in more detail, it's covered, along with a bunch of other stuff, in this delightful tome. Plastic Surgery, an ever-expanding guide, is a handy reference covering all sorts of techniques and tips from these videos. It's designed to fit into your infernal rectangle, and it's available as a Patreon member benefit. With the plugs plugged, I placed a couple of lengths of that shipbuilder's rope over the blanket roll and glued in place some pouches that I found in the Frostgrave Cultist 2 kit. The ropes were tacked in place with some thin CA glue to make life a little bit easier as I threaded the rope under the power pack and tied it off at the rear. More thin superglue was then employed to lock the knots in place. While I was round the back, I added this coin purse looking thing from the Wargames Atlantic City Guards kit, dangling from one of the loose ropes because, why not? Back to reality, see what I did there, and we're slinging a bolter. This one is from the Intercessors kit, and aside from the usual barrel drilling shenanigans, this one's getting a fancy sling made from a bit of rope. Meant to make do and all that. By now you've probably got the gist of this rope stuff, so let's pop on some belt greeblies once again from that Wargames Atlantic City Guard set. Then all that remained was to cork up the base up the dude, and do the whole painting thing that I flatly refuse to talk about because I can't pronounce the word zenithal. Wait. I hope you enjoyed that. I quite like making Space Marines moderately interesting. Let me know if the little narrative additions were a nice way to tell some of the backstory to the model, or whether they just made you vomit uncontrollably. Feedback is always useful. Anyway, I'm just about to hit 40k subscribers, so for the next video, I'll probably be doing something related to that number, if you can imagine such a thing.